Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of Media Matters for Anfield Index. Back to Tuesday night. Yes, it is Thursday morning, but we just can't escape that good feeling, can we? And let's be honest, it was another Anfield annihilation, wasn't it? Liverpool came to town, Anfield came to town, and Leverkusen left with their tails between their legs. And just in case you don't buoyed enough already, ladies and gents, Liverpool now have the same amount of points in their Champions League campaign as Manchester United have in the Premier League. And they've played a fair few more games than us as well. So with that sort of happy music, I'm bringing you on there. David Lynch, how are we on this Thursday morning?
Yeah, good. Just easy to talk about another win, isn't it? Top of the Premier League, top of the Champions League, and far better position than I ever expected. So, it's happy days at the moment.
I mean, it is always right in itself, but it is easy and it's great to talk about. And we shouldn't undersell this at all, should we? This was a demolition of a very good team of German champions, wasn't it? This was a great performance.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, when people said sort of early in the season, well, Liverpool haven't played anyone yet, then I presume that the German champions who went the entirety of last season unbeaten up until the very last game probably would rank somewhere highly in teams that, are someone to play against. So, this is a really good side. And I understand that Leverkusen's form this season hasn't been as amazing, but there's been a few draws in there. And so they've not been coming up with those kind of last-minute winners, but they're still a very difficult side to play against and a side that are hard to beat. They'd still only lost, 2 games since May 2023, I think, up until this point. And this was the 3rd defeat. So that shows you how hard to beat they are. And I think they showed on the night that they could make it difficult, and they are a good outfit. They've got some really, really good players, and they're well managed, well set up. But Liverpool kind of, I felt, controlled that first half, took a look at them, and then just kind of swatted them aside in the second. And obviously, getting the first goal is always crucial. That kind of breaks the game. But it's not then a given that you're going to, score 4 goals in total and that you're going to absolutely blow them away, because that hasn't happened to Leverkusen for a long time. I mean, I look back at the statistics, and Liverpool generate 4 expected goals to score 4, which is always fantastic when it lines up like that. But that's the most that Leverkusen have ever conceded in a match under Xabi Alonso. The closest I could find to that was they conceded 3.9 XG in a game against Eintracht Frankfurt, which was actually only Alonso's 3rd game in charge. So, obviously they're going to be a bit wonky at the start, aren't they? But it's a long, long time ago since they've conceded anything like that. And as I say, it's the most they've ever conceded XG, so their worst underlying defensive performance. And that's because Liverpool were just absolutely unbelievable and kind of, as I say, blew them away. So, yeah, you shouldn't undersell it. It's a massive, massive result, a fantastic performance in Europe. And I think a bit of a message to teams across Europe as well, that Liverpool at the top of that Champions League, and they played some sides as well. They look, I'd be ominous for other teams across Europe, because they look I think a few people have said they look like the best team in Europe. Well, I would agree with that sentiment at the moment. And yes, a long way to go, but they're looking very, very strong at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's another one where there's been so much talk and discord around the Anfield atmosphere, but Leverkusen was swept away by it, weren't they? Exactly the same as others have been recently.
Yeah, exactly. Very similar to that Brighton game. And Slot said after the game, actually thought that this one was even better in terms of the atmosphere, which I think, a European night, Champions League, and against, Brighton, a great side, but, bigger opposition, more high profile opposition. And the atmosphere was just fantastic. And it's been an absolute privilege to be at Anfield for the last 2, to be honest. I just kind of spent some time looking around and soaking it all up, because it is just an amazing place to watch football, an amazing place to work, as I'll try and call it, I guess. But just, looking around and seeing that and hearing the noise, and just phenomenal. There's no place like it. And I saw, and I'm sure you saw as well, the Leverkusen fan who suggested that there were speakers amplifying the atmosphere, which I think is just like the best compliment you could ever be paid, really. That it was so loud that they couldn't believe it. And that for me is, and I think this is the difference between German and English atmospheres, is that the English atmosphere is more linked to what's going on the pitch. And the best part about it is that when things are going like that, or you get a bad refereeing decision, or the crowd is really needed in those moments, or you're absolutely blowing someone away with 2 goals in a few minutes. It's louder than anywhere else on earth, and Anfield is just, you know, the peak of the English atmospheres for me. So it's just a remarkable place, really. And yeah, as you say, Leverkusen just kind of fell into that trap, despite Alonso, similar to Hertzler at the weekend, was kind of on the sidelines trying to calm everyone down. But you can't beat that power, and it has genuine influence on football matches. As I say, it's just absolute magic, really.
Yeah, and he even said in his sort of pre-match press conference about you can be in it for sort of 70 and then 20 you can get swept away. And that was kind of what happened just all of a sudden. I mean, what do you put it down to? Because if you look at that first half, it kind of felt like one of those boxing matches where it was kind of even, they were cancelling each other out, really tight. But then the second half itself, 4-0, it just sounds crazy that way. What do you sort of put that second half change down to?
I think they just wore Leverkusen down, to be honest, because I know the first half was considered quite even, but you kind of look at it, and Liverpool generate more of the XG. They don't give anything away, really, apart from that handball in the build-up, that goal, which was obviously rightly ruled out. Leverkusen didn't really play through Liverpool at all, and when they did, they didn't look dangerous. Liverpool really managed them. So as I say, felt like they were in control. And in terms of creating, obviously they weren't as good as they were in the second half, but they still created a decent-ish amount of XG, and would have had more, really, if it wasn't for there were so many desperate blocks in that first half. Liverpool had got themselves into really good positions, and it was some really good defending. But to defend at that level takes immense concentration and physicality. And you know, if you were demanding that over and over and over again of a side, then they're gonna crack eventually, and it's gonna tell. So I just loved it, really. That's it. I thought even, you know, it wasn't a poor first half for me. Even it was a really controlled performance, and Liverpool just turning the screw, and they just kept doing that as the second half progressed. And I loved the overall performance, to be honest. The fact that the first half was still controlled, and then they can just step it up a little bit and just keep knocking on the door, and then it'll obviously, you know, 9 times out of 10 it will come. So I loved every aspect of the performance, really. I think arguably the best so far under Arne Slot, actually, I'd say.
Yeah, with the context of the opposition and, yeah, who you're playing against. Absolutely. And as much as there could have been contenders for man of the match at one point, Lucho, I mean, I didn't think he'd be starting number 9 in the striker position, but he did, and a hat-trick. I mean, he was unbelievable on Tuesday night, wasn't he?
Yeah, brilliant decision from the manager, brilliant performance from Luis Diaz. And, you know, talking about turning the screw and trying to, you know, you keep asking different questions of Leverkusen. And I thought Luis Diaz was a big part of that. And I've written something on my Substack yesterday, which I'd kind of urged people to go and check out, which is, sort of analysing that tactical decision and how it worked. And I'm saying about keeping the pressure on Leverkusen. He just kept asking different questions all the time. It was, it was something the manager spoke about post-match in terms of we wanted someone who will come short and also go in behind and really offer that mix rather than someone who would stand up against the central defenders. And so you saw so many times in that first half. It's a really good example when Gakpo gets kind of a left-footed shot away that Diaz is dragging Tapsoba with him into midfield and just opens up a huge space behind him on the left wing that Gakpo exploits. Keeps doing that, keeps pulling him out. And Tapsoba's trying to stay tight and try and stop him influencing things. And then because he's just put that doubt in his mind of I'm constantly going short, you see in the build-up to the goal in 70 minutes that he's touch tight to Diaz. And all Diaz does is takes 2 steps back and then in behind him with a great ball from Jones. And then he's got the finish. So because he had that variation of sometimes going deep, sometimes going in behind, like I said, that just created confusion in the minds. And that was the brilliance of his performance, but also the brilliance of Arne Slot seeing that tactically could be an issue for Leverkusen, is to give them something else to think about. And I just thought it worked all the way through the game, really. And then obviously gets his hat-trick at the end. But it was a really, really genius move, I thought, from Arne Slot. And as I say, it takes the player playing well as well, which he absolutely did. But yeah, if you make a brave tactical decision like that and you win 4-0 and absolutely deserve to, and the player that you've put in the kind of controversial position scores a hat-trick, then it would be fair to say that tactical tweak absolutely came off. So absolutely brilliant from manager and player.
Yeah, no doubts about it at all. And I was going to ask you, because I've seen the Substack piece where you talked, and we've talked before about sometimes in the 4-2-4, there's the slight concern that Liverpool are getting outnumbered in midfield, and that's the way the sides do progress it. But in this one, we very much saw, like you said, Luis Diaz come back quite often, sort of give us a numerical superiority there. Do you think that, obviously you can say he's tried it and he's got to get all the credit for doing it. Do you think there will be an element that Arne Slot's now, I wouldn't say stumbled on, it's maybe too strong, but might be thinking, this works, we're going to keep doing this?
It's an interesting one, really, because, you know, how long can you keep Núñez out the team? How long can you keep Jota out the team when he comes back? You know, it's a big ask to say to them that you're going to put a winger as your starting centre forward. I mean, quite clearly, you know, judging from what we've seen, I think Arne Slot would really love a prime Roberto Firmino in there, because I always felt for Klopp, and when Liverpool were at the best under him, it was like having an extra man on both sides of the ball, basically. You know, he was always that extra man just arriving in the attack to make a kind of dummy run to open space for others. And then on the defensive side, it was like having an extra midfielder. So, you know, with Liverpool occasionally kind of getting overrun in that shape, it is something that he would clearly, I think, like profile-wise, but he hasn't got that at the moment. And, you know, maybe he just kind of views it as well as horses for courses. And this is a really good game to try this in, particularly as you had no Jota. And Núñez is a little bit more of a target man profile. But we'll see. You know, maybe he'll think this is a really good setup for him in big games, and he's not scared to make that decision, clearly. So we'll see whether he does it again. And, you know, maybe even Chiesa comes into contention for that role to do it in a similar way as well. So he's got options. And again, just like we said about the left wing, that Gakpo Diaz competition, you know, left back, what's going on there? It's good to have options and for the manager to think about, really, and decisions to make, because that means you've got a strong squad with a lot of players who are playing well. So, you know, Diaz as a central striker is just another one of those big options.
Yeah, and the fact Gakpo, Diaz, and Salah all on the field together, it just worked brilliantly. And there is one player I do want to talk about as well, because there are, for some reason, some people on this earth who don't appreciate the talents of Curtis Jones. But this was an elite European game, you know, in the best competition. And Curtis Jones just proved he's an elite European midfielder, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I can't believe surely there aren't people who still don't think he's good enough for Liverpool. I mean, the ones who thought that previously were clearly always wrong. I mean, he's a young player who's had a bit of disruption with injury, but when he was on the pitch, generally speaking, always showed what he was about. And he's always been part of Liverpool teams that have won an awful lot of games in a season as well. So the idea that he's not good enough, I've never understood that. I wonder sometimes if it's held against him a little bit that he's a local lad, but there's no doubt that he deserves to be at this level. And he's come up against the Leverkusen side there, as I say, with their record in recent years and being kind of the dominant force in midfield. Hugely impressive performance. And not just that, you know, he's good in everything he did. I mean, I spoke about that Gakpo going through the moment earlier. Unbelievable pass on his left foot out wide for that. And he was just full of little magic moments all throughout the game, but works his socks off, wins his ground duels. I think he's 5 out of 6 in this game. So wins the ball and keeps it. Great in possession, very rarely gives it away. I think pass completions around 90%, as it seemingly always is. But also, he's now adding a little bit of cutting edge as well, which is something, you know, I saw it so much when I saw him coming through the academy, that he had that in his locker. Great to see that coming back in now. And that ball for Diaz to score is just phenomenal. So, yeah, he's got absolutely everything to thrive in this system. When we're seeing as well, he spoke in pre-season, didn't he, about liking playing under this manager. He likes the style of football. It suits him better. And he's showing it now. And I just think you only can say now, please do stay fit. Don't get those little niggles that will disrupt your season, because I really want to see him fit now to the end of the season. He will play an awful lot of games, and because he's absolutely worthy of it.
Yeah, absolutely, no doubts. I mean, if it was Luka Modric had turned in that performance, people would be going crazy across Europe and almost expecting it that way. It really was that good. And I did want to ask you about Curtis, because at the start of the season, it very much looked like it's Gravenberch, Szoboszlai, and McAllister. Those are the three. Jones will come in almost as an alternate, possibly. You thought that, but it was an entrenched three we were seeing at the start of the season. In the current starting lineup, do you have Curtis Jones based on this form?
Yeah, I think with the fact that Szoboszlai is a little up and down, you maybe do, but I think we're seeing a bit more kind of leaning on rotation now from the manager as well. We are seeing he's willing to do that, because I think early in his reign, he was kind of, look, I've got it settled. These players know exactly what I want. We're winning. Let's just kind of keep this going. Whereas now, because it's so busy, he can't do that. He's got to rotate more. And so, he's only really got 4 midfielders there who he absolutely trusts, really, at the moment, because Elliott's not fit. Endo is kind of can come and stand in from time to time, but it's the 4 that he'll pick as starters, really. And I think they are kind of sharing out the games at the moment quite nicely. So I'm not sure there is a nailed on starting 3 at the minute. I mean, maybe. Well, I was going to say maybe we'll see it the weekend because it's a biggish game, but I still think he's kind of looking at them on an individual basis in training, seeing who's fittest, seeing who's ready, seeing who's playing well, and kind of working it like that, rather than having a really sort of cemented starting 11 at the moment, which is, again, is a good thing, because it shows that the players are playing well. He can afford to rotate. There's no huge drop-offs in any position. So Curtis Jones is in that mix, but in terms of who is the absolute best is that, and who he'd pick in the Champions League final if it was tomorrow, I'm not entirely sure at the moment, but I think that's a positive.
Yeah, the good thing is the bench options will be brilliant, whatever's happening at the moment. There's so many in form and stepping up. And speaking of players in form, are we just almost becoming numb to the fact that we just expect the Egyptian king to contribute goals and assists? Because, I mean, Tuesday night, he wasn't really anywhere near the headlines, but he gets 2 assists here. I mean, we're just numb to it almost now, aren't we?
Yeah, and it's kind of mad, because I came away from the game thinking, wow, Nkapie played well there, didn't he, up against Salah? I thought he really had a great game, really impressed me. And then the guy he's one-on-one with gets 2 assists and kind of in a 4-0 defeat. So it's a bit of a strange one, really, and it just probably shows that we not necessarily underrate Mo Salah, but you do get a bit kind of cocky about the idea that he's just going to do this in every game, regardless of how the man he's up against is playing. So yeah, absolutely brilliant. I mean, the right-footed cross, I don't really think I've seen that one from him before. I really enjoyed that. Really, really great ball in. And then the other one's a bit more trademark, where it drops to Diaz. But yeah, 2 goal contributions. He's scoring at the moment. He's assisting. And he has always sort of tended to start seasons well. I think my big concern about Mo is that you want to see him, in the second half of the season, be as prolific in terms of goal contributions. That's the only. I'm not saying a criticism, because his numbers at the ends of seasons are always still remarkable. But I think in the last couple of years or so, he has always been productive at the start, more productive at the start of seasons than at the end. And you just hope with a little bit of rotation, managing him, don't get him anywhere near the League Cup if you can afford it. Just really look after him. If you can do that, then hopefully he'll be, a bit fresher at the end of the season. And also this sort of less intense style of football as well. It would be nice to see if that has an effect on him. So we'll see how that plays out. But at the minute, yeah, absolutely out of this world. I mean, he is one of the best players in the world. The fact is as well, by the way, if he'd scored in that game, he would have been on 50 Champions League goals and in the top 10 scorers of all time. So we are watching literally one of the greatest footballers ever. So yeah, we probably shouldn't forget that. The fact he has a low-key game and gets 2 assists, probably pretty well, sums that up pretty well.
Yeah, it's just unreal. And I mean, speaking of things that are unreal, we're probably looking for some developments on this. I know you guys will ask on a slot every couple of weeks, so it's my turn to reverse the favour. Anything we're hearing on the 3 contracts? Because the more we mention this, as you know, the better all 3 seem to play and just be absolute world class this season.
Yeah, it just shows you that kind of losing all 3 would be a pretty disastrous summer. I still lean towards thinking that that's not going to happen. And I also think, it's one of those where I'm kind of relaxed about it on this basis, is that, I already think that at least a couple of them will sign up and it'll get sorted. And, we're not going to get a running commentary on it. So it will just kind of come out the blue and there'll be announcements and no one will have kind of seen it coming. So it's not kind of worth losing too much sleep over. But another element that I think people should think about with this as well is that basically, this recruitment staff, so Michael Edwards overseeing it, obviously Richard Hughes at the helm of that as well as sporting director, they've got a choice here, which is you could absolutely not sign all three of them up. You could go in a different direction. You could say that, okay, Trent, it's up to him, I guess, on that front. And the other two, you might say they're too old, it's too risky, whatever. But if you make that decision, then the true judgment will be what you do to replace them next summer. And basically, if they're going to be willing to let them go or they can't find the agreement, you then have to find players who will perform at the same level in the next couple of seasons. And that is what they will be judged by. And if they're willing to let them go and the belief that they can get those players, then absolutely fair play. And I don't think it's even worth being, angry about or criticizing, because we'll just see after that. I wrote a very similar thing actually about the Lenny Yoro decision over the summer. Look, Liverpool's choice was to not get involved at that price. They didn't think it was good value. There's no point making the judgment on it now. Let's see what happens. And I'd say, 3-4 months into Arne Slot's reign, they haven't missed a Lenny Yoro. He wouldn't have got on the pitch, and he's been injured anyway. But even if he hadn't been injured, I don't think he'd have got near Liverpool's team whatsoever with the options they've got. So that was a good decision. And similarly with the contracts, if the worst comes to the worst and all three leave or even two leave or whatever, their contributions to the team will have to be replaced by the recruitment staff. And how those replacements go is when we should really judge what we think about that. Otherwise, I think we can just stand there and say, okay, you make the decisions. Everybody's got this big faith in Michael Edwards. There was celebrations when he was coming back. If these are the calls that you're going to make on the contracts and they don't get sorted out, let's see what you've got in terms of replacing them. And that's how we should judge it, really. Not I don't think before, or it's not worth panicking about. It's just one of those things that will happen. And if they go down certain routes, they will also, by the way, be judged by if they sign them up and suddenly there's a decline in all three and they don't perform at the right level. So the pressure's on them, and they wish to be judged by how that plays out. So we'll see, I guess.
Yeah, we will have to wait and see. Some of us will be hoping as well at the same time. Fingers crossed on that one. And we normally turn at this point to off the field news. And in terms of what's going viral, it's probably yourself, to be honest. I know you did the video afterwards and talked about when you were speaking to James Pearce to say this isn't normal. We shouldn't get carried away with what we're seeing as well. I mean, nearly 48 hours later, about 36, still feeling the same?
Yeah, I just think we should be making more of a fuss about it, to be honest. I mean, I'm all for not getting carried away, and you've got to be kind of cautious that you don't go over the top. And, I would never sit here and say, Liverpool are winning a lot this season. But I think they certainly look like contenders, which again, is kind of more than I expected this season. I mean, people could say, well, you're daft because look at the squad he inherited. He inherited a good situation from Jurgen Klopp. Liverpool have always been a good team. But I still think that the transition to a new manager is extremely difficult. And in a disruptive pre-season where you've got international tournaments, you don't get your players together, new manager coming in and trying to tweak things, and he is doing things in a different way. I know there are similarities there, but he has changed a lot in terms of the tactical profile of this team and the way it defends in particular. And the fact he's made a start where we're coming into the last international break here, Liverpool are top of the Premier League, top of the Champions League. It isn't normal. It's the best start that any manager's made in Liverpool's history. It's one of the best starts of any new manager coming in anywhere in history, never mind that. So it's not normal. And it's ridiculous the job he's doing. And I just think we should be making more of a point of that clearly Liverpool have got themselves an unbelievably talented manager who's doing a fantastic job so far. And yeah, might blow up further down the line. Might be some lessons to learn with this league or the expectation at a club like this, and that could happen. And as I say, not getting overly carried away. But what we've seen so far, we should be highlighting as ridiculous, really. And yeah, I just think it's huge credit to Arne Slot and the players also for taking on board what he's asking them.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. As the stats showed this morning on a few tweets, he's now surpassed Jose Mourinho's start at Chelsea as well. It's been absolutely sensational. It really has. And the only other off the field one I wanted to ask you, and I don't know if this is supporter manifestation or maybe the source might be one, but there's a lot of talk or hope maybe around Tchouaméni and links with him to us, and I know people that's a target people have wanted for a while. Heard anything in it, or think it's chip paper, should we say?
Yeah, I kind of asked someone about that maybe about a week ago or so, just to say, he's on the market. Is that something that anything Liverpool would look at? And he kind of poured cold water on it a little bit, to be honest. Didn't get massive encouragement on that. And to be honest, my thinking on this as well is I wonder whether Liverpool's, I think we saw over the summer that the profile of the number 6 that they would target if they were to sign one has slightly changed, really, with obviously Zubimendi, totally different player to Tchouaméni, more of a tempo setter, really, than your traditional kind of guy who breaks things up and moves the ball on. I mean, Tchouaméni's he's still excellent with the ball at his feet, but he's not kind of a Zubimendi where it's a little give and go, trying to be a metronome and then speed it up, kind of that kind of player. So I think if Liverpool were to get another, I think it'd be someone more in that ilk. And I know they were big fans of Tchouaméni, but I just wonder that profile change, whether that would kind of move them away from him now. And it's not really worked out for him at Real Madrid anyway. So I don't think they're big fans of him. And I know he's won a lot of trophies, and I still think he's a fantastic footballer. But they kind of not. The fact they're willing to sell him suggests that it's not been absolutely perfect. So I'm not massively convinced that Liverpool would go back in for him. I think if Jurgen Klopp was the manager, I think they'd be all over it. But I think, it was said to me a few weeks back that the profile kind of changed, and someone like a Lavia or Caicedo, they maybe wouldn't think of as a great fit now, whereas they would have a couple of years ago. So it's different now, I think, what they're looking for. So I wouldn't expect that they would go in for Tchouaméni, to be honest. But I mean, I've been proven wrong in the past, but everything that's being said to me at the moment, I don't really feel it.
Interesting. And I suppose on that, because time is ticking and it is still a long way until the January transfer window opens, but we've got international breaks and other things coming up. Do you think there's any element that Liverpool will be looking and going, maybe this start under Slot is better than we thought it would be? Now is the time to sort of do business and strengthen while we're right there. Do you think that will be an element of thinking or urgency in January at all?
I don't think they'll approach it like that, because you kind of never do. I think the whole thinking will be, as it always is there a player that we like in the long term that we can get in this window? Let's go and do it. It's not kind of, right, we need to do something in midfield, so we'll do that. It's kind of, this guy's brilliant, he'll improve us, and he's available, let's go and do it. That's the key element here, is if they're available. And they've shown, time and time again that they will do that in January as well. If the players they like are available, Luis Diaz, Virgil van Dijk, Cody Gakpo. So they're not averse to doing business in January. So, but it just relies on that kind of player availability, really. So we'll have to see if one of those is out there who they want and can be got. But I would love to see them strengthen. I think, I don't think it's going to happen at left back because they've got 2 on the books. But I'd love to see something there. I think central midfield, just to have one more who he really trusts and to add them to that rotation would be fantastic, really. But we'll have to see if anything happens there. But I personally would love to see a little bit of strengthening.
Yeah, just be an absolutely massive boost all round. No two ways about it. And we talk so much recently, but what's ahead of a crazy week? And it will finish on Saturday night, 8 p.m. Aston Villa under the lights at Anfield again. With it being this late kickoff, are you expecting the same sort of ferocity like we saw with Leverkusen, the same atmosphere to come alive at some point?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I think just the fact that everyone's got so much more time to have a pint before the game, I always think it makes a difference. I remember going to, was it Newcastle away under Jurgen, and I think it was only a 5:30 kickoff on that occasion, but he was kind of like, after the game, he was saying, "Is there some sort of rivalry I don't know about here? That why was it so mad?" And I was just thinking, no, everyone's just absolutely bladdered, to be honest. And it always makes a difference, I think, the later ones. And obviously this one being 8 o'clock should be even better. And I keep saying that and thinking about, imagine if City drop points in the 5:30, and then it's going to be absolutely crazy. But I think it will be good anyway. I mean, it's a tough game. Villa will be absolutely determined to turn things around because they're struggling at the moment. They are a tough team to beat, and they'll want to show up and put in a performance. And Liverpool will just want to go into that international break with a win that keeps them top. So it's I'm really expecting a good atmosphere and yeah, really looking forward to it again, because it's, Liverpool look bang in a title race now, and so every game is massive and important to win. So yeah, I hope the atmosphere is right up there and can kind of spur them over the line.
Yeah, absolutely. If we won all three this week ahead of the internationals, that would be absolutely brilliant. And I suppose with this being the final game of the three, a lot of people looked at the lineup for Leverkusen and went, well, that'll mean Darwin's being rested and Szoboszlai will come in against Villa. Do you think there will be that rotation, or do you think there's an element of Slot might go, this was brilliant, we'll go again?
I don't think he has to do it, because obviously Tuesday going into Saturday late is not a bad turnaround at all. Both at home as well, which has been really, really useful. And Villa, by contrast, have had to play on Wednesday away from home, got beat as well in ridiculous circumstances, and then obviously have to travel up to Anfield for that one. So they've got a tighter turnaround having been away from home. So much harder on Villa, really. So I don't think he necessarily has to, but I think he possibly will, just to add that little bit of freshness. It's so easy to bring in a Nunes in that situation. Fresh legs of Szoboszlai, two lads who can really press from the front and harry Villa. So I think he will do it just to add in a bit of energy. But if he decides, he looks at it in training and thinks X, Y, or Z player looks better and they look in form and I can play them again, then I'm sure he absolutely will, because like I say, the turnaround's in Liverpool's favour there, and so there should be freshness even in the ones who played against Leverkusen.
Yeah, absolutely. You'd accept either or as long as the result and the performance are the same. That's all we're after. And the only real negative coming up on the horizon is another international break at a time when no one wants it. I'm not even sure anyone's particularly interested in it this way at the moment, but hey ho, I suppose. The worry is, could injuries derail the season a little bit? That's the only sort of thing you're looking at the moment. If there's one player you could veto, like Fergie used to do, and block people going, who would you stop heading off at the moment?
Maybe Canate, just because I always kind of worry about his fitness. He's played a lot of football so far for Liverpool this season, more than we're kind of used to. So you always have that concern in the back of your mind, and he's having to cover less spaces, which I think is massively helpful. Hopefully that's why he's staying fit at the moment, and that's just going to be a consistent thing now. And the preparation seems to be bang on, so that's great. So he's the one, though, because I just think you still have that worry about him being injury prone in the back of your mind. And another one, if I can just throw in a second one as well, is Alexis McAllister. I don't think he's been quite as outstanding between the last international break and this one. I don't know whether that injury he had and it just been playing on his mind a little bit. I just love him to have a week off, really sitting on the beach and just chilling out. But unfortunately, that's not going to happen. So, but I'd still say Canate for me is the most important one there.
Yeah, absolutely. He came alive in the second half, but you do wonder if that abductor's playing with him a bit, McAllister, at the moment, but still brilliant in the second half there. And we'll finish, as we always do, with the wider football bits that have come up, and trying not to go over the top, because it's easy to sort of steer into all the stars are aligning type of approach. But, I mean, we'll start with City. Did that result surprise you midweek?
Yeah, hugely. The fact that they're losing 3 on the bounce is crazy for starters, but you don't expect them to go to Sporting there and get beaten that way. And it was one of those kind of classic, if City are going to get beat, this is how it's going to be done, in terms of, I think Sporting ended up with like 27% possession and managed to score 4 goals. So it's just very much a kind of classic counter-attacking performance that came off for them. And the sort of thing that City have largely stamped out in recent years, in terms of being easy to counter attack. The physical, they close off the midfield, really, really good at stopping counters and continually penning sides in. So to see that weakness is, from a Liverpool perspective, extremely encouraging. And I watched the highlights against Bournemouth again as well, and that was more than a counter attacking performance. They were just playing through City at will, and this is stuff we haven't really seen in recent years. I know they kind of have wonky starts to seasons, but this to me feels like more. And so I think, if you are watching with your Liverpool hat on, you've got to be encouraged by that. They just don't look as strong, do they?
No, No two ways about it. And I know Arsenal on the stats had something like 86,000 crosses or something, as people are going on about this morning. But it's another Arsenal defeat as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I watched a bit of this game, or I watched the second half of it and saw them it was just throwing in crosses, and I just thought it looked so short of ideas in attack. And, prior to that, like kind of the last couple of seasons, that for me has been kind of one of the big drawbacks of Mikel Arteta, is that I never felt like he could coach an attack, and then kind of completely proved me wrong over the last couple of seasons. But it's going back to some of those kind of bad habits of not looking fluid going forward, just slinging it in at every opportunity, massively reliant on set pieces. And obviously the good news for them is that Odegaard was part of the squad yesterday, so him coming back, I'm sure he'll have a massive influence on that. But the caveat is that obviously if they lose one more game, say they lose at the weekend to Chelsea away, which can absolutely happen. Chelsea are a decent side and could beat them. If that happens and Liverpool win and they're 10 points behind, this sounds crazy, but I genuinely do think that they'd be out of the title race. I think if the winning total for the title race is going to be anything like 90 points, you cannot afford to be 10 points behind at any point. That is too big of a deficit to claw back, because you're looking at you have to win like 20 on the spin to claw something like that back. It's ridiculous. So I genuinely do think if they kind of lose one more in this next couple of weeks and Liverpool win at that weekend, then they are out of it, which is, shows you the standards that are set in terms of title races these days. But it also shows that Arsenal are struggling a little bit at the moment. And I know they were kind of unfortunate really with how the Inter game played out, that handball and whatnot. But I still think, they showed signs of weakness again, which is just not looking there creatively or where they should be. So again, more encouragement for Liverpool. And what, by the way, on City, just to go back to them as well, speaking to a City fan the other day and kind of said, look, is this a Rodri issue or is it deeper? And he made the point that, the whole midfield profile really age-wise is not looking fantastic at the moment. And we all know from seeing Fabinho and Jordan Henderson how quickly you can drop off that cliff and it just not be the same, and the gaps start to open up in your midfield. So again, it's upside for Liverpool, and it's something to think about if that is what's happening, that, Arsenal's struggles are what they are. They could already be out the title race, as I say, pretty sharpish. City struggles, it doesn't look like this is something that Pep's going to be able to solve, or, certainly in this early part of the season, it doesn't look like that. And it doesn't just look like their usual wobble. So what an opportunity for Liverpool if they can keep the form going and keep getting the wins. It just, it does feel like things are lining up nicely for them, but they have to keep winning. That's the job.
Yeah, no two ways about it. And when you look at that Champions League table as well, I mean, Liverpool have got a perfect record. It's probably going to take something massive for us not to go through in the top 8, which is still crazy to say. City and Arsenal have still got a little bit of work to do. I mean, it's even a real bonus if they finish sort of 9th, because they will at least in those qualifying spots. But that means 2 extra games, doesn't it? Which wouldn't hurt us whatsoever.
Yeah, would absolutely love to see that from Liverpool's point of view, because it saps a little bit of energy out of them. If you can get them both in there, would be fantastic to just throw in 2 extra games while Liverpool have got their feet up. It could make a massive difference, really, because you think your Premier League games either side of that just become 10 times more difficult. If you've got 2 legs there of really, and the thing is, those games, and this is an underrated factor, is those games are going to be intense. You could get an absolutely awful draw in there, because the sides that are going to be left in there's going to be a lot of good sides that are not getting into the 8. Looking at it now, so they could be horrible games and really difficult ones. So yeah, perfect that Liverpool don't look like they're going to be anywhere near that. And the fact that City and Arsenal might just slip into it will be, another boost for Liverpool, really.
Yeah, no two ways about it. And the final thing we'll finish on, we're actually, because we talk about refs and refereeing decisions and the way things have gone. But what's caught me in the last few nights, and especially talking about last night, does someone need to remind Mikel Arteta and Tyrone Mings about the handball law and how certain things work, do you reckon?
Yeah, the stuff with Arteta on the touchline just needs to calm down, to be honest. It always looks worse when they're not winning or whatever, but I just think he's just a little bit much. He needs to kind of tone it down a little bit, and that was another really good example of that yesterday. And with Mings, I felt for him a little bit, really. I was one of those where, you would have seen the one with Arsenal, was it last season, where Gabriel does the same thing and the referee just shows a bit of discretion to not give the penalty. And I wish the referee had done the same here. I thought it was a good decision last time, really, for the ref to not blow up for that one. And I just thought, he's clearly not trying to gain an advantage. He's not gaining an advantage of any sort. He didn't realise that the ball had been taken. He just thought it rolled in his direction. So I thought it was ridiculously harsh, really, and a silly mistake. And you want to say, yes, concentration or whatever, but so harsh to give it for me. And I felt for him a little bit, really, in that situation. But, it's also another sort of element of kind of injustice that Aston Villa will be feeling as well coming to Anfield. So I think Liverpool got to be very careful. They will really be determined to bounce back and get a big result. And, they're not in form at the moment, but they've shown already this season they can be massively dangerous.
Yeah, they are definitely capable of a result. Liverpool are going to have to be on it on Saturday night. No two ways about it. And there we are, ladies and gents. Saturday night, 8 p.m. will be the next game ahead of the dreaded international break. And what a week it would be if we win all three. It's been a brilliant week so far anyway. So all it leaves me to say as ever is, David, for the time, the insight and the answers, it's much appreciated.
Thanks for having me.
And ladies and gents, that was another Media Matters for Anfield Index.